I'm LeAnne Bowick. I am the manager of the Doland Triplex, which is owned and operated by Local Opportunity Company. Local Opportunity Company was started as an investment to provide an entity to own the triplex. So that's where its start came from. I am from Doland. I am a graduate of the Doland High School. Went to college, came back. My husband and I started our family here and our business. So we're kind of lifers. I don't know if there was a hesitation of starting a business. This particular entity evolved out of a need. Not necessarily, I want to build a business and this is what it's going to be. This started out of the need for rental housing for teachers. That was the initial question, is how are we going to provide housing for teachers? A friend and I were sitting at a blood drive and we were discussing the fact that there was going to be 3 teachers retiring. These were not necessarily leaving the area, but they were at that point where they were going to retire and new teachers would be needed. There was very little, if any, options for these people new coming to the area to live. We had one rental unit or one option of apartments that was full and not really any other possible place to put these people. And a concern was retaining these teachers. We'd had a couple positions that had a lot of turnover. You know, a new teacher comes in the community, she might stay for a year or 2, but she's probably driving from, 60 miles perhaps. So how long does it take before that girl or that guy picks something closer to home or, is just waiting for an opportunity to come up elsewhere? They weren't necessarily grounded in the community. And the idea was how to retain these people. How do we get them here? How do we get them committed to our community? How do we make them belong or feel like they are home here? So that's where the idea came from. How can we build something, and where do we get the funds to build something where we could offer something different than what we have? We could offer modern housing, and it needed to be rental, because when somebody new comes to a community, they aren't necessarily in a place where they're going to build. They come here, hopefully probably for a job, or maybe they have relatives or whatnot here, and hopefully they get attached enough and want to stay and then build. But we had very little to offer in a rental opportunity, so that was really where we were kind of targeting what we would do. It would be a rental and hopefully attractive. One of the things we looked at was what we had and what was lacking there. The current rental apartments that we had, I think they were built in the 70s. They're more like on a split level, so they have stairs down and stairs up. They also have no garages and they have communal laundry. They are also based off of income. Now, a new teacher coming into the area, he may be able to get into those apartments based on income, but if they had a spouse, chances are their income levels put them above an opportunity to get into that spot. And if they were in there, they may be subject to have to move out because of other priority people that would need to come in. So that is one of the stipulations, I guess. It needed to have a higher income guide of whatever it was we built, but yet be affordable and accommodating. The other thing we looked at was something that would provide for the elderly. We have very little facilities around here that would accommodate somebody that would have a wheelchair or a walker, say. Most of the homes in the town, they haven't been necessarily updated, they've been adapted, but not necessarily built according to something where somebody would need accessibility. So that was a priority as well. So our goals were, young people coming to town, young families, and possibly something that would be suitable for elderly. So that facility was built specifically to be different than what we had. So it has no stairs, it has garages, it has a yard, and they are about 1,400 square feet, each one. So they are actually bigger than what a governor's home would be. And because we went through a grant process, it is based on income, but it's called a median income level. So it puts it a lot higher than, say, typically your standard housing this whole process happened very, very quickly. When I say we, a girlfriend of mine and I just decided that someone needed to do something. And there's got to be somebody that knows something. So we chose to make phone calls and search the internet. And within a very short period of time, like that afternoon, we found the South Dakota Housing Grant. And looking at that and looking at the guidelines there, it became apparent that that's probably the best choice we had. And basically the guidelines that were in the application is kind of what pushed the project this way or that way. You know, the next thing was we did research, I guess you would say. We did a poll of the community. We sent out a survey asking, you know, what you have. Okay, well, in the grant process, it has lots of different things that have to be required in order for you to be able to get the grant. And the grant is based on a ranking basis. So how well you fill out that application and how well you meet all their criteria puts you at better odds to hopefully get awarded a grant. So in that, one of the things that they looked at was they needed a housing study. So we specifically walked into BASIC looking for that housing study. BASIC had gotten a housing study of the community in 1996. So they were able to provide that to us, but I had to write a more current version based off of today's information. So that was why we actually walked in the door. I knew that they provided lending, but I didn't know that they had, I guess, more guidance opportunities, and that was really what we ended up using in the long run. We went to Margot and specifically said, well, what do you think about this? Or how do you do this? Or I need this, what am I gonna do about this? And she was pretty quick to say, well, you could talk to so-and-so or this person, which we'd already made a lot of phone calls, but it was just reassuring. Margot was very optimistic. She said, well, of course we can help you. There's no reason you can't get this grant, you know? So she was very encouraging. She also filled in the blanks maybe where I didn't know exactly what something was. One of the things we needed was a pro forma, which basically spelled out the expenses through the lifetime of the project and how that looked in terms of rent and the different forms of expenses and income that would be in there. She was very helpful in that part. Also, when I did the economic study to update the housing study that was done, she was very instrumental in that. She was able to help me fill in the blanks there and put some legitimate figures in there where we needed to prove why this was important and why this was something we couldn't just go and build ourselves, that we needed the assistance. So she was very helpful with that. The whole BASIC entity, I think, was supportive of the project. Nothing like this had been done in our community, and so I think they were all very excited and happy to see that something was going to happen, and they for sure would do whatever it was to promote and help it happen. So there wasn't a single person that said no, even though as primary we're like, this is never gonna happen, they're never gonna fund something in a small town, but amazingly it did happen. So, well, going into building a new project, you know that expenses are high when you build something. So that was one of the main concerns, is how can we build something that people can still afford to live in, and that we can actually get it paid for. Something that was going to be an asset to the community for a long time. So that was probably the main concern, and how to go about getting it funded. One of the people that I talked to going through the grant, they kind of encouraged a strategy per se, and how to maybe better ourselves in order to be awarded a grant, and that was by proving that you were vested in the project. So we went out and got investors, people that would put money into the project. So we positioned ourselves that we had a certain amount of investment money, and we had a certain amount that we were going to be lent, which BASIC helped us fill that gap. So we positioned ourselves that we have invested this much in it, can you match what our investors have put in? So that's where our number came from, asking for the grant, and then BASIC provided where the gap was. Well, in the town of Doland, when we started the project and did a little research, we needed to understand what we had and where it was lacking. When you look at the homes in the area at that time, this was done in 2014, February 2014. There was 130, what you would say, homes within this community. Over 70% of them were built in 1925 or earlier. So it was something we were aware of, but weren't, I guess, knew exactly how significant of an issue it was until you go and look at the facts. And that was what we were after, was what are the facts? What do we think we know? But is this really, I mean, is this how it is? And it definitely was. We definitely had an older housing stock that was not updated for today's uses. You know, electrical was a big issue. Today's families, they just consume a large amount of electrical needs, and majority of these homes did not meet these criteria and were therefore really not even safe because they haven't been updated. So that was one issue, is, you know, this is a fact. I mean, our housing is old and we need to update. Nobody had built a new home. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. There was very few homes built in the last like 20 years, and I could get you the facts if you want, other than governor's homes. Mm-hmm. So there was a need for a new, I guess, fire in the community to get people motivated, and we thought this might also be part of the stimulation, that if we did this and we got this done, that maybe others would soon follow suit and possibly invest in their homes, give people encouragement that, you know, we're vested here. This is a community worth building in and worth growing your families in, building a business here. So that was part of the initiative as well, is to get something done to prove that our school is worth saving. We need our teachers. We need our kids to stay here and not move away. So
They talk to you.
if somebody has a dream or an idea, I would go after it. I wouldn't let somebody tell you, no, you can't do that. I would not, I guess I wouldn't take no for an answer. The question that I always go back is, why not? Why can't I do this? What is it that's stopping me? Or, for that matter, anyone else. Basically, be willing to ask questions. Find somebody that knows, or if they don't know, they're going to find somebody else. And I think that was one thing that Basic did. If they didn't know, they found somebody that could figure out whatever the answer was that we were asking. I guess I'd say believe in whatever your project is. If you love your hometown or love your small community, it's worth saving. I think any hometown is worth saving. I think small towns grow great people. So I think they're worth investing in. Not everybody can live in the city. But one of the things that was a big concern here was saving our school. You know, I really think that that's a big part of our city. And without that, you know, granted we'd still be a small town, but that's where you start, I thought, in this situation, is if we could provide something to assist our school, then you have kids here. Since this project has happened, we've got a daycare, and that daycare is overflowing with little kids. So to me, that's optimistic about the future of our community. So I hope that in the future there are more things being built, and that people will walk in the door of Basic and say, I have an idea. I have this dream, but I don't know if it'll work. Let them walk in the door, and let Margot and the staff at Basic say, well, let's start here. Let's figure out how to get this to happen for you, because that's definitely what happened with my situation. I mean, maybe I'm a little more determined and stubborn than most. I'm just a farm girl, but, you know, I think if there's something you really believe in, I think you can go after it and you pretty much can achieve whatever you want. And I think Basic is one of those entities that believe in small towns and are there to help them. Even if it's not something they can immediately fund, they probably know somebody that can assist. So I wouldn't be afraid to ask. I'm not sure if we would have actually succeeded without Basic's help. We did this grant application in a very short period of time, so there was limited opportunity to gather investors. I maybe could have asked for the whole funding for the project, but I don't know that we would have been successful. I think Basic filling in the gap really helped us, and I don't know that any other lending entity would have jumped into this. We are a rural community. there are the real issues with the value of what you build here isn't necessarily going to resale for that. And I think a lot of lenders look at that, where Basic maybe looks at the core of the community. What is it providing? And is that enough to say, yes, this is a viable project? So I honestly don't know if it would have happened without Basic. I think we needed them to fill that gap and support us, and I guess give us the you could do this kind of attitude, and I guess made us finish the project. So I really don't know if we would have actually got it without their help.
Perfect.
I think the Doland Triplex has multiple levels of success. In the beginning of this project, we were able to gather, I guess, a rallying movement from the whole community as a whole. From the surveys to assistance with the community, like the city of Doland, the Doland housing, the school system, all of them rallied around and helped provide what we needed to apply for the grant. There was a lot of information that we needed just to even apply for the grant. And all of them were willing to be interviewed, put in their input, say what was wrong with the current situation, and provide information on what they thought could help. So in that aspect, I think if we did nothing more than get people to think about the future, I consider that a success, because I think things have happened since then. I also think it was a successful building project. We were able to get this grant, so I believe that people maybe have more optimism now. Well, they could do it, maybe I can do it. So I think that was a bonus as well. The building itself came out wonderfully. There's very little that I would change about it. It achieved what we wanted. It is 0 steps, so it would help with anybody, who needs accessibility or not. It has ample room. There's 2 units that have 3 bedrooms, so that is something that could be for a family or whoever has too much junk, per se. But it provides something that we didn't have, so I think it's a success there, and I think it was built physically to endure time, so I think it will be an asset to our community. Currently, it's housing 3 younger generation workforce people, which was one of our main goals, was workforce housing. So we have 3 people that are actually new to the community living in the triplex. So drawing people to the community, I think it was a success. We had one teacher the first year it was open that stayed for a year. She had some changes in her personal life and wasn't able to stay, but that unit was again rented out immediately. Like the day she moved out, the next day I got it cleaned and somebody else moved in. So it actually has been full ever since it was built. The first renter came in March of 2015. That renter is still there. So this is they're in their 3rd year lease. The middle unit where the teacher moved out, that one is still rented, and this person is in their 2nd year, and the first unit was rented the first year as well, and that one is in their 3rd. So all 3 have remained full. So that tells me that we hit it as far as the need, and that people do enjoy it and like it. It's affordable for them to live in. All of them say that their monthly maintenance bills, with their water, their heat and everything, they're well within their means. So even though that rent for those facilities were much higher than anything else in the community, it's still affordable to them. Excuse me. So I think the rent was probably one of the biggest naysayers, that said, oh, you can't build it. People are never going to pay that for rent. But they are, and they're still living comfortably, and they're enjoying what they have. So I think being as it's rented and it's full, I believe that's a success, even though it was probably our biggest obstacle is it was higher than I would have liked it to be, but still well within the means of their income. So
do you feel like
I think there probably is room for another one. I'm not sure if I'm ready yet to take it on, because it was a big project, and when you do something in a small town, you put your whole self into it. I was there for dirt work. I was there for cleanup. I was there following the building process the entire way. Because one of the things that happens when you do these projects on a small budget is you don't have room for a general contractor to get paid. You don't have room for somebody coming in charging fees just to do whatever little job. I mean, you take that on yourself. And I think that's common in rural communities. I think that's common in small towns that people take on multiple roles. So it was probably not out of the norm for me to do that. However, building a triplex was definitely out of my normal day. But I would still say, if you have an idea, jump at it and go. I definitely want to point out that when you do a project like this, it's not a one-person show. You need your community around you. You need everyone to support it. There was letters that people wrote. If they did invest, they wrote a letter and they said, we need this. This is what we need. And so that went in the grant application. That went to the state, and they saw, I think there's probably 20, 30 letters in there that says, this is a community worth doing something in. This is a community that wants people to live here, and we want to retain what we have and maybe try to grow a little bit. So even if somebody doesn't think they can do anything, a simple thing like a letter saying, yeah, we support this, yeah, this is a good idea, that I'm sure helped us in the long run. We did surveys in the very beginning. That was something that went out to every household, just asking them, you know, what do you think about our housing? You know, what about your current home? A lot of that was trying to understand what we had, what we needed to change, and maybe what to do in the future. And when I go back and look at that, those answers that were put in there, I still think we have more room, more things to be done. And so I hope that I don't get myself going on another project, but chances are I'm probably not good at sitting still, and I'm going to probably pursue some of those things, because I think there were more people that want to do something, but they maybe don't know how. And I think if Basic put the opportunity out there, I think they would do it. And I think Margot is trying to get some of those things going. She started a grant loan program to help people, encourage them to do small projects in their home. So I think that's encouraging. We have had a lot of people take that on and do that. And when I look back at those surveys, a lot of them had little issues like electrical. I think if we provided the answers, I think they would go at it and do it. So I think that's, if nothing else, I think Basic stands for encouragement in a small town.
Perfect.
Well, I live here. I love it here. My kids are here. Well, it's very emotional for me because I do love it here, and I want other people to have that. It's hard to see people leave. There's been people in this community, been here for years, and loved it here, and they had to leave because of their housing. I mean, just because you are older and you can't get around, I mean, I don't see that as a reason to leave. I think find them a new opportunity. I think there's more things we can do. I don't want people to leave just because we're a small town. You know, I want to provide whatever we can to keep those here and to share the small town with everybody. Maybe I dream big, maybe I've got a big heart, I don't know, but I like it here, and I think other people would too. You know, and I don't want to see my kids or their friends leave and go miles away from their family when there's probably an opportunity here, they just haven't realized it. So I hope that if nothing else, people think that, well, maybe I can do this here, or maybe there is another way. I really don't want people to look at a small town and think that there's a limit. I don't believe that at all. I think if you want it, it can happen. And I think there's plenty of options out there. You just have to be willing to ask and look for them. When I say community helps, and I mean that, you have to have your city council, you have to have your mayor, you have to have your neighbor. I mean, granted, you aren't going to get everybody to say, yeah, that's a great idea, but you need to talk to them and ask them. I mean, they probably have an opinion, and chances are they're going to help if they can. I mean, and when we started this project, there wasn't hardly anybody that said, oh, you're wasting your time. I don't believe there's anybody that said that. But there was a lot of people that said, well, I can do this. or look at this. And I think that was the biggest thing encouraging the project, is that there was other people that believed in it other than me. It just might have took my gumption to get it started. I'm LeAnne Bowick, and I own and manage the Doland Triplex. My name is LeAnne Bowick, and I am the owner-manager of the Doland Triplex in Doland, South Dakota.